Hi, welcome to another edition of Hashtag Finance. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and today I'm here with Anthony Durkacz, Chairman of the Board of World Class Extractions.
Thank you, Barrington, for having me. My apologies. Thanks, Barrington, for having me.
No problem. That might be the mimosas talking because we're actually celebrating a market open for World Class Extractions. So thank you and welcome to the 72nd floor of First Canadian Place for our market open events. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, first of all, how do you spell Durkacz?
It's a great question. So it's Anthony, and the last name is Durkacz.
Yeah, try, that name has been butchered countless ways. I would hate to order a Starbucks coffee with your last name. So how did you
make me unique, though.
How did you get here? How did you get to today?
Sure. So I started actually on the TD Securities trading floor, trading foreign exchange and then money markets, but always had a passion for stocks. And when I was in my first year of work at TD, I ended up being diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. And so I was sort of in and out of hospitals and sort of had a life-changing event. And saw the light, and I decided that I wanted to try to do something more fulfilling in my life, and I wanted to be part of building something, as opposed to just sort of trading it for a bank. And so I ended up leaving the bank, became a CFO of a fuel cell company, which was a startup, which really sort of taught me all the lessons in the microcap world. And this was a duly listed company in Canada and the US, so I sort of got both experiences in one shot. Luckily, after probably what should have been the fifth bankruptcy of the company over, so we had to learn every sort of way to keep a company to survive. We ended up getting bought out by a billionaire in India, and then I did M&A work for him for a couple of years. They wanted me to relocate to Dubai, but at that time we started a new family. That didn't work, so I became the CFO of a company called Snip Interactive, and a director, a co-founder in Canada, which is a mobile marketing company. Took it public, raised money, and then in 2013, I became president of Capital Ideas Investor Relations because I liked the investor relations, the networking, and I saw both sides of companies, both management side and the investor side.
Investor relations covers so much. Like
it does.
You can't just pin one definition. It's
no, and the beauty is, when you're on management or you're the investor, you're sort of on two different sides of a company, and so this sort of gave me, I think, a broader way of looking at companies. And then within a year of that, we had some really great successes at that time. We had we weren't into junior mining. I was never into junior mining. So in the fall of junior mining in sort of 2011, 2012, we were involved in businesses that were actual companies generating revenues with EBITDA and looking at rolling them up using the stock as currency. And that became sort of this flight to quality. So people that were sort of bailing out of junior mining or were just getting slaughtered financially began to turn into this, what we would call flight to quality. Mm-hmm. And that was, for companies. And so we ended up having a number of successes, ended up having, the stocks that were the most actively traded at that time on the TSX venture. Until 2014, when I ended up buying into First Republic Capital, which is an exempt market dealer, an investment bank. That sort of gave me the ability to go and, invest in companies and sort of do a lot more than just sort of focus. And on the IR side, I found that IR was a very thankless job. And then when companies would cancel your contracts, your options would also be canceled within 30 or 60 days. And as an investment banker, those options never get canceled. So the wealth creation, if a company is successful, worked out better. And so with First Republic Capital, it sort of began to give me access. There's an interesting story for the CSE, though.
Okay.
So this was back in 2015, you had, the CSE at that time was beginning these cannabis companies. And
yes.
And that was began to become very interesting. And we invested in this company at that time called Abatis Bioceuticals. At that time, the ticker symbol was ATT. I don't know if it was still the same.
Yeah.
And we had bought into that company, and we closed it on Valentine's Day in February 2014. And that was a 5-cent financing with a 10-cent half warrant. And that stock, within about a month, went to about $3 a share on massive volumes. And it was one of those first bellwethers that the CSE began to generate more volume. And after that came Nutritional High, which is, David Posner and Jeff Mazur. So we ended up helping them finance at the end of the day. But Tinley Beverages is when Jeff Mazur went out on his own. And Tinley was very interesting because at that time, there was a market where you would raise money, but there wasn't the same amount of liquidity. Tinley was that first stock that started to get, I think on one day in August, and this was in 2015 or 16, we ended up trading over 8 million shares.
I remember that.
Yeah. And that sort of began to change this dynamic of liquidity in the CSE. And then after Tinley, Nutritional High ended up doing a day where it traded like 35 or 38 million shares in a day. And then all of a sudden this liquidity, function came out, and it was just amazing because the CSE to us was always a great place to list. And because of the cost, number one, and number two, it was just, it wasn't as invasive, right, on our business. And then once those liquidity events happen, that changed the entire dynamic.
Well, it was good for us as well because we've been telling the story that we're not a company's ability to get volume and to trade isn't necessarily based on the stock exchange. It's based on the story.
100%.
And if you have a story and you have a real story and a real business, that's going to get people trading.
Absolutely.
And, they may not necessarily, where the company's listed may not be the first place they look. They just want to make sure that they can get it and that they can trade it, and that wherever they're listed can handle it, which we proved, and that started ringing some bells.
Correct. So. And it was really important. So, what I did realize in past experience when it comes to microcap companies is that liquidity is key. If when you're going public as a company, you can have the best idea, right? But at the end of the day, if it's only an idea and not a business, you can run into significant trouble. So it's critical, and I think it's true now within the industry as cannabis is beginning to change. We're going to, from this amazing boom with the end of prohibition, where companies today have to focus more on operations and less on promotion.
It's this will lead us into our next segment. We've gone to various events and various conferences, and people are talking, well, what's the trend? What's the trend with cannabis? Where's it going? Where's it headed? And extractions is usually 1 or 2, 1A, 1B, and you have a world-class extractions.
I would say that. I think also, when you look for sort of these tailwinds for bull markets and where they're going to come from, the cannabis industry was predicated on, the end of prohibition in Canada, and that just drove this amazing industry that, hit $150 billion and 300 and something odd, companies now that are listed in Canada, and it created this incredible wealth boom in this country that we're still enjoying today, even though the markets are down. But the legalization of edibles and concentrates that are coming, I think, could be a tailwind for the extraction industry, because your edibles and your vaporizers and your concentrates are all in extracted form.
Yes.
And when you look in the U.S. states that are legal today and some of the data, edibles, beverages, vaporizers, pretty much most outsell just flower itself. So I think, hopefully that'll be a bull market driver for the industry in general, because in this country we know it's coming to legalization. I think in December is the last that I've heard, but we haven't had an official date.
Yeah, we heard the unofficial October. The second unofficial is December.
Yeah, so. And so if they do that, you would think that hopefully there's going to be some win, definitely for extractors, for sure. And then I think legalization in America, the federal government, there's going to have to legalize. when you have more than 2/3 of your states that have legalized it for medical purposes, at least for medical purposes, it's coming either through the state act, or other ways, and that hopefully should also provide a very strong, bull market rally, especially for companies that are focused in the U.S.
Now with world-class extractions, you had a very special milestone event that's occurred. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the merger of World Class and Quadron, to me, was a merger of operations, technologies, and finance. And when I look at especially microcap companies, you have to have all three of those in order to be successful.
And on that note, we'll take a small commercial break, brought to you by Pump, another CSE-listed company.
We're social here at the CSE. Each and every day we'll keep you up to date on trending topics that investors are talking about, such as cannabis, blockchain, and esports. Follow daily CSE news and events on your favorite social media platform: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You'll find exclusive interviews with leading entrepreneurs from a variety of industries, thought-provoking stories from across the world of finance, and updates from CSE events taking place worldwide. Join the conversation and connect with us today.
And we're back. I'm here with Anthony Durkacz, chairman of the board of World Class Extractions. So we were just talking about the merger with Quadron, and of course Rosie
Yes.
London.
Yes.
Let's go into that. Who called who first? Who picked up the phone? What was that aha moment? Did it come naturally?
So I picked up the phone, so I reached out to them. When I co-founded World Class, we had this idea in mind, and the idea was that in the world of extractions, like in the world of cannabis, this is going to be a commodity, and so this is everything. At the end of the day, is going to come down to a price-quality relationship,
right?
And so for price, you have to have efficient operations, and you have to have scale, right? Because this is a very large-scale commoditized environment or industry that we're in. So we had come up with an idea on how to develop a continuous flow extraction machine, so that unlike other extraction machines at the time, and this was 3 years ago, in the cannabis industry, none of them were continuous flow. So they were all start-stop machines.
Okay.
Turn them on, you'd have to clean them out after they were turned on. So you could only do them in sort of segments. And so the idea was, could we produce something that, number one, would be continuous flow, meaning you can operate it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
Because that's where you're going to start to get that scale in. And it's got to be scalable. So you have to be able to do volume, right?
Right.
And then the third component was, could you make it mobile? Because mobility is a function. If you're going to develop
Sorry, when you say mobile, do you mean the actual?
So you can move it easily.
The actual machine?
The actual machines, yeah. And so you want to be able to be mobile, to move it easily, so you can move it from location to location if necessary. And that was sort of this idea behind efficiency. We, when you come up with ideas, of course, ideas are always going to be played with a number of challenges or obstacles or problems that you face, and then you continue to work on them and try to overcome them. And in my sort of looking at the rest of the industry, Quadron appeared to have an answer for me, and so that's how, and that was the reason why I reached out to them, and then assessed what they had. Absolutely loved their technology, extremely complementary to ours, and allowed some of the missing pieces, the pieces that we were having trouble overcoming, fit in there. And I believe their team was operationally incredible. And so that's where we're really fit. My strengths in the industry are really sort of accessing the capital and dealing with the public markets. And so it really became a fit for us, and that's how this marriage came together. And I mean, it's been a wonderful marriage. There's been so many sort of extra things when you merge a company that you never expect, from the audit side and legal side and stuff like that. So that's sidetracked us for a couple months, just because of the enormity of the amount of paperwork and stuff that had to be done, to remain, on time with your filings and everything that you have to do from audit to legal to.
Well, at least you didn't have to switch exchanges.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like everything was already at home.
And so those and we were both firm believers in the CSE. Not to plug you guys, but that
we'll take it.
So it was really just this perfect fit, and so far it's been amazing. And now that we're finally past these enormous piles of paperwork to get this thing done and properly, now our sole focus is short-term revenue generating marginable contracts, because in this industry, in cannabis in general,
right.
in any industry, but I'm going to say specifically in the cannabis industry, you have to be operationally savvy, and you have to build that income statement. 2020 is going to be the year of the build of the income statement.
2020 is the year of the income statement. You heard it here first. I like that.
And I think companies that fail to understand that or see that or work towards succeeding at that, are going to ultimately fail in 2020.
Well, on that note, you've given us the future projections of the market and what 2020 is going to bring. Are there any last words you'd like to let the audience know about you or World Class or anything about?
Yeah, I'd like to thank our shareholder base. Number one, for being very patient with us.
Mm-hmm.
We were fairly thin on news releases over the summertime, also because of the state of the market, which was a reality. But that does not mean that we were not working extremely hard on trying to build real shareholder value here, and so I want to thank my shareholder base for their patience and for being an investor in us, and that we will not we should probably we'll be reaching out, I think, here a lot more often very, very soon. So.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you not only on the 72nd floor of First Canadian Place, but also at the Canadian Securities Exchange. You are like an unofficial employee and ambassador of the Securities Exchange. And this has been another episode of #Finance. I'm your host, Barrington Miller, and this has been with Anthony Durkacz, Chairman of the Board of World Class Extractions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Grace from the CSC reminding you to make sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates on our listed companies as well as new listing alerts. For more in-depth content, be sure to pick up our free quarterly magazine, Public Entrepreneur, available online at thecsc.com.